Good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to welcome you to this event, Transforming Interfaith Leadership Online. My name is Joel Lohr, and I have the privilege of serving as the president here at Hartford International University for Religion and Peace, or HIU. It is an honor to be part of this, and on behalf of the faculty, our staff, our students, I want to welcome you to this special conversation, a partnership between us and the Interfaith Youth Core. How do we support interfaith cooperation on the internet? How do we elevate the conversation? So much of our conversations do not feel elevated these days. And how do we work to build bridges rather than inflame an already polarized environment? Here at Hartford International, we are committed to helping us all get better at using the internet for good. And we know that our partners at Interfaith Youth Core are as well, to promote understanding, respect, and to create partnerships between people who otherwise wouldn't talk about. Our old tagline, which we still use here all the time, is about exploring differences and deepening faith. And we think that that work can also take place very profitably on the internet. Before I pass things over to the panel, I just want to say a little bit about Interfaith Youth Core, or at least say a little bit about Ibu, who founded the Interfaith Youth Core and is a friend. I don't know if many days go by as president here that I don't think about Ibu's work or have been influenced by it minimally. And it just reminded, even this morning, I had a text from an individual, actually a president who is now president emeritus at a well-known university here in the US. And that person texted me and said, I should actually read it to you, it's very interesting. Essentially, the person said, I'm teaching a seminar. I've been asked to teach a seminar to first-year college kids and talk to them about multi-faith America and how to live into a multi-faith country, interfaith America. And what was interesting about that question is he was very kind to say, do you have a chapter of something you've written? And I've written some things, but I really felt that the best way I could help this person was to point to Ibu, who the person knew, and said, oh, I was kind of wondering about Ibu's work. Where would you go? And so I pointed to the introduction to this book, Out of Many Faiths, Ibu Patel, a more recent book that he's published, although his Interfaith Primer is a book that I've used as well in my classes. Phenomenal work. It's a real honor to work with Interfaith Youth Core and to know Ibu personally, and to know that the good work he is doing is being transformed into something even bigger, which you might hear a bit about tonight. But for now, let me pass over, without any more ado, to our esteemed panel, Reverend Paul Rauschenbusch and Celine Ibrahim and Scott Thumma. So welcome to you, panelists. I will pass over to you. Thank you. At least I think that's what I'm supposed to do.
Thank you, Joel. Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Thumma, professor of Sociology of Religion at HIU and director of the Hartford Institute for Religion Research. I don't think it come as a surprise that everything has moved online, and that's especially true in these last few years. The internet has disrupted traditional definitions of community, authority, and belief. And it's often used to divide people, but we are absolutely committed to believing that it can be harnessed to foster understanding. And we at Hartford International are working to be a force for positive interaction with academic underpinnings. I myself have studied the adoption of the internet by religious groups, congregations, since before the web actually existed. And most recently, I've been looking directly at congregations' use of technology during the pandemic in a large 5-year study that we're doing. We can talk about that and many other things, but tonight I'm also joined by 2 friends and colleagues for this conversation about transforming interfaith leadership online. So let me introduce them, and then I'll say a few things, and then I'll turn back to them for their insights. First of all, Reverend Paul Rauschenbusch is the Senior Advisor of Public Affairs and Innovation at Interfaith Youth Core, soon to be Interfaith America. And so maybe we'll talk some about that. Paul and I have known each other for many years, and I've always been interested in how he works with and builds platforms on the web that highlight hopeful voices and especially those working for interfaith engagement, whether in higher ed or elsewhere. And he is clearly one of the persons who works with national journalists to tell the story of interfaith relations in America. Paul, long ago, was the editor at BeliefNet. Not only that, he founded and led a very interesting religion section on Huffington Post, which grew to be one of the largest interfaith religion sites online. Before that, he was associate dean of religious life at Princeton, and I think a chaplain at Columbia University, and he's also an ordained American Baptist minister, and an all-around great guy, honestly. And then I'm also joined by Dr. Celine Ibrahim, and Celine is again a wonderful friend and has come to my rescue many times when I was the dean here. She's also the author of Women and Gender in the Quran from Oxford University Press, and Islam and Monotheism from Cambridge University Press. She's edited a book, One Nation Indivisible, Seeking Liberty and Justice from the Pulpit to the Streets. She also holds a doctorate from Brandeis, I believe, and a Master's of Divinity from Hartford. And again, I think you'll be interested in what she has to say. She offers all kinds of lectures and workshops and seminars around the world, and is really just a superb voice speaking about religion and civic engagement and chaplaincy and Islamic intellectual history and women's studies. And so I think folks will benefit from hearing both of these friends. But before I turn to them, let me say just a little bit about HIU's past efforts in some of this, and then we'll continue on. Back in 2001, immediately after 9/11, the school reached out to BeliefNet, and I worked to help suggest offering classes at that point in time, at that critical moment, to learn about Islam. And in working with BeliefNet, we were able to launch about 6 or 7 online courses and actually taught over 1,000 people in that moment in time when people were not sure what was going on. And that really opened my eyes to see just how powerful it could be to have interfaith engagement and conversations online. From that point, I began our school's online educational program and really worked hard to try to spread our school's interfaith educational message. And that has continued to the present. HIU is continuing to try new ways to engage people online and elevate the interfaith, interreligious conversation. In the past year, we've completely overhauled one of our master's programs. It's now an MA in interreligious studies. Not only that, we changed our school's name as Joel suggested and rebranded. We launched new websites and blogging platforms, and we've stepped up our social media presence, including creating content for TikTok, primarily because we want to also serve as a role model for how people of different faiths can develop relationships and learn from each other. So now before I turn to Paul, which I will do in a minute, I want to remind folks, if they have questions or comments, to please put them in the chat or indicate by raising their hand or whatever, and we will get to a question and answer period after some comments. But now let me turn to Paul, because part of the reason for being here is to hear some of what they're doing at Interfaith America. I really like that term. that's a very nice one. So take it away there, Paul, and fill us in on what you're up to and your thoughts on the topic.
Well, first of all, let me say how grateful I am that that Hartford International has welcomed us to this platform and to be with esteemed colleagues, and just a delight. I'm also it's such a case in point, actually, like the chat, because like, people are saying, hey, an amazing, someone is coming in from Brazil or even somewhere exotic as Iowa. We have people coming from all over, coming together to learn with one another and from one another. And so I just think this is like a perfect case in point on why we're here and ways to approach the internet in a curious, inviting, welcoming way. So this is just a wonderful opportunity. And I'll say a little bit about my background, which, as Scott said, since I went to seminary in the mid 90s, that was just as the internet was becoming a publicly available or widely available, and I very quickly realized like a lot of my interest was drawn towards the internet, and since that time I've had kind of an offline online hybrid approach to what I view as my vocation, which is to people from different faith traditions, rooted in my own faith tradition, which is Christianity, but with different faith traditions, realizing the power of the internet to transcend geographical barriers, to transform time barriers, to create a different kind of affiliation based on interest rather than purely like fate of location. And so this is potentially the greatest, the internet, digital technologies is perhaps the greatest invention in human history. It's like the creation of fire. It has totally transformed our world. We are just at the beginning of it. And yet it has already disrupted every part of society. So it has upended media, it has upended politics, it has upended what we view as international relations. It has totally transformed these things. And it's all in transition. It has upended religion in extraordinary ways, challenging what we view as authority. You don't have to have the authority who's your local pastor, imam, rabbi. You can go online and find a religious authority that you prefer. What does it mean to create community? So, we used to have the test in Christianity was when 2 or 3 are gathered, Christ is in my name, Christ is there also. Does it count if it's online? Jews are working with this with minions. Like, do 10 Jews online constitute a minion? None of that is resolved. None of that. It's all in transition. So what I'm saying all of that to say, if we haven't figured out, it's because it's impossible to have figured it out. Everything is changing. Everything is in transition. It's an exciting moment, but it's also a fraught moment because of the transition, because of the disruption, because of the ways that traditional things that we could count on, for better or for worse, are no longer always true. It makes us have to be really attentive to it. And if I have one message, it's talk about the internet with your religious community. I often ask if I'm talking to a big big keynote or whatever, I say, how many times have you heard a sermon about the internet? Just about the internet. That wasn't just everybody's got to unplug. And it's like, that's not a reality. We're spending 8 hours a day online. That's the average. For millennials, some of them claim it's 24 hours a day, that they feel connected 24 hours a day. Unplugged is a great idea, but that's not the reality that we have to face. People have to be, my hope is that religious communities go full in on what the internet means, the moral and the moral aspects of it, and to what it means for our communities. And also how to, just a skill building. And so one of the things that I'm most proud of actually in my, well, I think I'm at 25 years now of ministry, is something that I created just this year with some colleagues and some wonderful people across, who have helped me with my development over the years, including both Celine and Scott, which was called #Interfaith, Engaging Religious Diversity Online. And I'm gonna be later. I'll put a location where you can check out the curriculum online, and it's free and available. And the goal was to really give people the tools, not to tell you what to do, but to give you the opportunity, the space for reflection before you go online, so that you have a North Star. I think that's, and I'm gonna, these are kind of opening remarks, so I'm gonna stop and after this, that my goal with all of this work is to give people the space and the questions to ask, what do I want to accomplish when I'm online? How do I not want to be buffeted by what the internet wants, which is not always what we want. The internet was created, and the internet was created, and right now is mostly is incredibly impacted by commercial forces, as well as governmental forces. And it's not always in our best interest. We can use it for our best interest, but we have to realize it wasn't created just for our enjoyment. It's not our playpen. We can use it for good. So I can talk a little bit later about the curriculum if we want, but maybe I'll leave now and just maybe if Joe could play the video that is like the lead into the curriculum, and then after that I'll be quiet for a little bit, and then we can come back and maybe have more conversations about this and other areas of the internet. But if Joe wants to play the video so that people can get a wider understanding of what the curriculum is meant to do.
The internet can be a place of isolation or connection. It holds our collective wisdom and our ignorance, our laughs, likes, and life. The internet allows us to transcend space and time, spanning over texts, emails, streaming platforms, and social media, a space where sacred conversations can unfold and spiritual journeys can begin. A space where we can choose to meet people from diverse backgrounds and beliefs and embrace the vibrancy of our differences. Whether we're using the internet to connect religious communities in our city, like Amanda Qureshi, who links Muslim and Jewish women of Texas online, or building forums for interfaith friendships to bring diverse discourse into residence halls. The internet offers us the opportunity to state and restate our rich and ancient traditions in a new medium for a new generation, an opportunity to offer a place of decency and faith, a sanctuary of hope and higher purpose, and maybe have a little fun. An invitation to uphold and honor our principles, combat misinformation, and encounter new perspectives. Like the Yemeni Muslim man who used online connections to turn supposed enemies into friends and built an interfaith community that helped him escape a civil war. Or welcoming insights from a rabbi who's bringing Torah to TikTok. We can log on like the passionate priest who gathers a flock on Facebook each day to make the inspirational accessible. And learn from Simranjit Singh, an educator, activist, and scholar. Like them, each one of us has the opportunity to honor our traditions as we bring them online, creating a space where people of diverse religions and worldviews can build a shared life together. Join a growing community of leaders, learning how to foster interfaith cooperation online.
That was excellent, Paul. I really like the music here. I want to go in with it. Celine.
Yes, I was wondering if it was a good moment for me to jump in.
Absolutely, sure.
So I'm so pleased to be here and to be among great partners in this work and in thinking about what are the new edges, the growth opportunities here. And one of the ways in which I have been engaging with this #interfaith curriculum is both as a religious leader myself and also as an educator, someone who works in seminaries with other aspiring and established religious leaders, but also with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, young folks who are really digital natives and thinking very creative, but also sometimes just consuming media without being very thoughtful. So I thought tonight that I'd give you a sense of how the curriculum has been particularly helpful for me in both of these roles. Let me start first with the aspect of being online and being a religious leader, being accessible online. And I first had to experience this. One of my videos is now up at about 1 million views. And what had happened in this video, I didn't anticipate it, but I had my email as part of a presentation that I was giving that was later streamed, and my personal kind of academic email. And then I started to receive emails from all over the world, a woman who's having a difficulty with her spouse, people who want to ask me about how they should raise their kids. Should they go to Islamic schools? Should they go to secular schools? Just all kinds of things, people asking me for resources. And I had to really think in that moment, who are the people who I'm responsible for? All of a sudden I have this community that is asking, of ministry essentially of me. And so I never had, as a person who was coming up being formed as a religious leader, any type of training to think about these deep questions. And on the one hand, I feel very much that, there's people out there, they have reached me, they're asking for help. Isn't it part of my responsibility to respond? So that's one way that I was thinking about this space as a leader. And it really does, as you're stretching your boundaries and becoming accessible online, people are finding you. And what do you do with that? So this is one thing that as I've been engaging with the curriculum, it's been helping me think about, what do I do with this? Including sometimes people reach me with sexist, comments, or reach me with, just things that I'd rather not them reach me with. And, it does also give rise to all these questions about trolling. And, sometimes I worry because I work at an institution and people could find me if they don't like what I'm doing or like what I'm saying. And so this curriculum, the hashtag Interfaith curriculum, has modules that help you think about what is your bandwidth, what is your kind of tolerance for receiving different types of hate, how do you psychologically process this? Another moment in the curriculum that was really helpful for me as I was first going through it as a consumer of this curriculum, working through it, was this invitation to think about each person. I invite you all to do this, to think about your timeline of your digital life. And as I was thinking about what my own digital life, I realized in retrospect that my first op-ed that I had put in a major platform in the New York Times, it came out in early 2016. And if you remember those years, they were not, great for anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim bias. And after the op-ed launched, I started receiving phone calls, text messages from people all around me asking if I was safe, if I was okay, because at that point, the New York Times, in which the op-ed was published, didn't have a robust comments filtering. And I was getting very, very scary things, coming in the comments section, so much that I thought, am I even going to go into work today? Because I don't know what's happening. And so this, I think, while platforms have maybe gotten slightly better about kind of regulating the comments and the like, so online, platforms, journalistic platforms are learning, I was not prepared at all for that moment. And I realized that as a religious, a person who has, I think, something to contribute to the public discourse, for several years after that, I was actually not sure I even wanted to be part of this conversation, because it can be very psychologically impactful. And so for me, this curriculum was really helpful in putting some of those tools in place, like, oh, I wish I had, been prepared for this, and it would come as slightly less of a shock when it happened, or, here's the types of platforms that I would want to engage with if I don't want to be, subject to these trolling and the like. And another part of the curriculum, as I was working through it as a religious leader, that was particularly helpful is thinking, what do I want to build, given there are all these different types of platforms? So rather than just waiting on an invitation, how could I think about myself in a proactive way in these spaces? And one of the things that I realized in doing this reflective work, Reverend Paul, you were so right in saying that the curriculum is this space, giving you tools for reflection, great prompts, links to people who have reflected on some of the same issues that one needs to as a religious leader in this online world. And so as I'm going through this curriculum, it's emboldening me in a way to say, I do want to be part of this. I think it's inspiring. And the line in the video that we just played there said, making the inspirational accessible. And so much of what I do as an academic, is trying to get books out there and writing out there. But a lot of people do like to engage with, feel that they're having this access. And it really is important to leadership. And a lot of people, especially from minority traditions, feel themselves isolated and are really looking for that connection. So as a religious leader, it has me thinking about where I could go next with these platforms. And being a person who just dispositionally likes to feel like they're trained and competent in setting foot in an arena. Some people can just dive in, but I like to feel like I'm credentialed or something, that I have some preparation for this endeavor. So the curriculum is really wonderful in that regard too. And I want to say a little bit of my use of the curriculum in the classroom, and specifically with more of the Gen Z crowd. And so what I'm finding with the Gen Z crowd is that because they have not necessarily had reflection times and spaces to deliberately think about their online presence, they're actually consuming without really reading the labels on things. I think about the food industry, and you can pick up a package and kind of read what it contains. And the internet doesn't have that for young people, and or us for that matter. Not that we're not young people, but and I'll just share a little bit of an anecdote to show how this is so relevant. I had my students look at their screen time app and make a pie chart of where they're spending their screen time. And one of my students said, "Oh my God, I spent 17 hours this week on TikTok. Like, how did I do that?" Right. And so, and that student wasn't the only one who was sort of shocked at what the raw data, the raw numbers were telling them. And so I think it's both for us who, also have tremendous amounts of time online and can easily get distracted. But I think in particular, this curriculum with the tools that are built in and these reflection prompts has a lot to offer. And I also think of another space in which the curriculum has really helped me think about the role of religious discourse and religious leaders, but religion more broadly, are these types of moral issues that are so very relevant to the present moment. Free speech and privacy issues, and what kinds of communities we do want to build online. How do we dispel disinformation? And Reverend Paul, I'm going to put in a second the link to your op-ed about it's the moral obligation of religious communities to be actively engaging for good in this space. Just like religious communities were building hospitals or getting into the education sphere, or this is a social good, and we need to be involved. And so there's tools, I think, built into this curriculum in the different modules for helping us generally as people who are part of communities or who hold religious values and a sense of public morality. There's great tools for thinking about how we can help work with the consumerism the consumerist platform of the internet to make it serving of all people more robustly. And one of the links that I found in the curriculum was to an organization that, I want to get the language right here, is working to embrace liberatory technologies. So looking at helping people create content and generating spaces online that help socioeconomically marginalized or culturally, religiously marginalized folk. So there's so much in the curriculum, and both I'm going through it as an educator and seeing wonderful resources in it, and just as a religious leader and just a religious person more generally. So I have to, thank you for inviting me into it at this early stage, and I'm just really grateful.
You said many good things there, Paul. Do you have any comments?
Oh, well, Dr. Ibrahim and I go way back to Princeton, and so it's just so very, very gratifying, and I'm so grateful. We're actually we invited some people to help us at this stage to be pilots, to do piloting. So actually, we're trying to, it's a very internet thing. We're iterating as we go, and so hopefully we'll continue to make it better. I do want to I just want to first of all, thanks, Celine, for all of that, and mention we did try to make a holistic curriculum. So another thing that was meant that another module is about spiritual self-care online, recognizing that that the internet has been shown to increase a sense of isolation, depression, anxiety, and so trying to directly speak into that by having one of the modules be like, how are you going to care for your spiritual well-being, your psychological well-being, your personal well-being in online spaces, offering some suggestions for tools, as well as encouraging people to make a self-care kind of plan to keep it in mind, because this is real. This is and alongside that, and again, Celine mentioned some of this is how to safety online. So how to avoid getting hacked, how to avoid getting doxxed. It's what you did was a very easy mistake to make, but if you're going to share your email in an online setting, make sure you're doing it intentionally. Don't do it accidentally. So those are the kind of things that we're kind of trundling along, and it's easy to make a mistake like that, but we also just need to be cognizant of what we're doing when we're in online spaces. So that and I think what's also interesting, I think, about the kind of younger Gen Z, Gen Alpha was the first time I've heard that term, makes total sense, is that often because they're digital natives, we tend to say, oh, they know everything about the internet. But in some ways, because they don't have the benefit of seeing things evolve and seeing things as they came into being, they actually, it's harder to have a critical eye in some ways. And so, the parable of the two young fish and the old fish, and the old fish says, how's the water? And the two young fish say, what's water? It's we're so in it. And if you haven't had a chance to think critically about it. So another part of the curriculum is actually a timeline of the internet and a timeline of religion on the internet, so that you have a sense of how religion has played out over the years, as well as how the internet was formed. It didn't just poof, all of a sudden the internet, and it's getting transformed. So all of those things are part of it. I am delighted that this is talking about the curriculum. I think there's so many people who are doing such good work. Another thing that we're doing at soon to be Interfaith America, by the way, we've been Interfaith Youth Core for 20 years. On Tuesday, we are transforming our name to Interfaith America. Stay tuned. We, want you all to take that journey with us. Another project we're involved in is a disinformation policy table that is being held by Convergence, that does big policy. They attack thorny issues, bringing a national table. They realized they didn't have a religious component to their work. And so we have actually created roundtables of religious leaders talking specifically about the way disinformation has impacted religious communities. And the Muslim community and the Jewish community, in fact, are most impacted by disinformation online, along with some other groups. And so it's just really important. Again, the op-ed that I put out there was like, we need to lean into these questions. The internet is creating moral questions for us to make sure that we are being part not only of the policy questions, but how can religious communities be part of the solution? How can we train up? And this is being framed in some ways as interfaith communities but it's also individual communities. I think like what you can do as a small 50-person congregation where everybody is really dedicated to creating a certain ethos online, you could do amazing stuff. And so one of the groups actually that's piloting our curriculum is a church. And they're using it as almost as a Bible study, as a spiritual exercise, because how you behave online is a spiritual question. So one of our friends, Rabbi Josh Stanton, he helped introduce a phrase called this: will you take the sacred pause as you're online? Will you pause for a moment? Reflect, who do I want to be? Well, how do I want to answer? Do I want to answer with generosity and curiosity, or do I want to slam someone and start the fight? and both are options. I've been guilty of both. So in case you think that I'm some sort of saint over here hovering, I'm preaching to myself. But I do think that it's important to consider the spirituality of how we are online. And this is an opportunity for faith leaders, whether you're ordained or not, anybody in the faith community, to impact how we are online. So I'll stop there, and again, looking forward to questions, and Scott, any comments that you have about all this?
Yeah, as a sociologist of religion, right, I study religious trends and that sort of thing. And obviously something that Pew Research and many other places have pointed out is that younger generations are significantly less likely to be in religious congregations. And that's been a pretty significant trend over the last 15, 20 years. However, as Celine pointed out, there's no lack of young people on the internet. And if they're going to encounter a spiritual message, if they're going to encounter interfaith relations, it's going to be most likely to happen on the web and in social media. And I think you're right, Paul, if congregations, if spiritual people don't take an authentic message to the web, to social media, then they're left to flounder with messages that may not be very spiritual, but not very moral. And it's clear that the internet is a pretty rough place, but it also has bright shining moments. And I think that's only because good people are out there putting virtuous material on the web. And so projects like this, other projects, people being active in chats, even with the trolls, I think is really critical. It's just absolutely essential.
I'm another aspect of this that will kind of take us in an odd direction, but but people are asking the internet for questions that they might have normally asked an imam or priest, or, so people are searching, like, is there a God? What should I do with my life? They're putting those into Google. Like they're asking, like, and what is, another, if we're really going to go down like the dystopian future, it's, it's right now, like when I was at Huffington Post and as the religion editor, we did a story on what does Siri think about God? And we asked Siri about God, and Siri had been programmed at that time to deflect and say, I suggest you ask a human. That's not what I talk about, and Siri, Siri, but that's only because that's how Siri had been programmed. Very soon, we will have pastors. We will have IA pastors, AI pastors who, because with Watson, it always says like, it assesses your question, it learns from your question, it learns how to answer it better every time. And pretty soon, like, imagine all the scriptures that immediately at your disposal, like trigger, and someone's going to make an artificial intelligence pastor or imam. There's also like, I do a little bit in VR and have had a talk show in VR. And VR, and meta is an extraordinary challenge. So I wrote another piece about that. What is metaverse in religion? That I'll put in the chat. But there's the whole thing around VR is that you will experience things. And so you're going to experience being at the foot of the cross when Jesus is being crucified. And someone's going to program it. What will Jesus look like? Like, what will Jesus say? All of that, as like, smarty pants, theological types, we know is disputed. It won't feel disputed when you hear it from Jesus. And so this is what we're kind of, this is not future. This is now. It's right now. Relevant Magazine did someone just put out a Christian music hit, like a Christian rock hit that was completely AI generated. And it was by someone, by an artist named JC. And it sounded as if like someone did. So I'm just saying, I'm offering another dimension to what we're talking about, which is broader than, our curriculum, which is really like, these are fundamental challenges to the future of how we understand religion, and the transmission of faith traditions in authentic ways. Because right now, like, pretty soon someone's going to make a buck by creating experiences, and you're going to be able to sit with Buddha and ask Buddha questions, and who's going to do the translation. And I don't want to think about what will happen with Islam. Someone may make a huge mistake, but there will be. This will be another area. So I'm interested in those questions too, and I'll put that to you two who are actually really working in scholarship and theology, which is, and sociology of religion, which is not exactly what I do. So I'm curious how you imagine either schools like Hartford International or the seminary you're teaching at Groton, how you imagine responding to those moments. Those are some of the things that I think about a lot.
The word that stood so much out to me was authenticity. And part of what the curriculum is helping me think about is, on the one hand, how do I know if something is authentic and true and real? But it's also helping me think about, how can I bring a piece of who I authentically am in my offline life into my online life, and helping make that so that they aren't two very different spaces, and I'm one person online and I'm another person in person. And I think that for anyone who's, especially religious leaders, but really anyone, how do we do that? And Chris, in IRL, I'll put it in the chat here, but one of the things is that stunned me about the curriculum, and I'll put this in the chat. I've been putting things from the curriculum in the chat this whole time. So the spot the troll game, I was so bad at spotting the troll.
Oh, me too. I got like a B-, and I was like, I've been doing this my whole life. And I was like, oh, I'll just do it like to make sure it's okay for the other people. And then I was just like, damn, and it's just an example of like, this is hard. It's hard, so I'm so glad you said that, because I felt so like terrible about myself. I was like, I'm not so good at spotting the troll. I thought I would be better at that.
One of the things that has amazed me, I have preached to clergy for almost 2 decades to bring technologies into the life of the congregation, and besides just putting up a website or something. And the past 2 years have really shocked me at just how much congregations and religious people can change when they have to, and how important in many ways technology and the internet and social media have become to the life of religious communities. But it also has opened up the possibility for folks to be lurkers and a kind of low risk way for those who are not involved in religious communities to eavesdrop and to drop in on congregational life and see what it's like. And that's been quite refreshing to see, and to hear stories from pastors or religious communities about how they reconnected with people who had left, but also how all of a sudden they had these folks dropping in on their services that had no contact with the religious community or even with a religious outlook. And I think there's a lot of promise that as you said earlier, Paul, we're just at the beginning of some of this change. It still has a long way to go.
One of the things I'm thinking about as Interfaith America is continuing on this journey is what I'm thinking about. What I would have really liked is more training on how to be a content creator, because on the one hand, the sensationalized content is kind of what often goes big, but you don't want to cheapen religion in that way. And so how can you go big with religion content? And so I think that's a great question for folks like me who are just kind of dabblers in this online space, but especially just thinking about the people who are coming through the pipeline who with a little bit of training, guidance, direction could really develop some fantastic products or platforms.
Yeah, I just put a piece that we reported on at Interfaith America magazine, which was called Faith Talk, and how like people are really using that to for terrible reasons, but also like for really good reasons, and people are able to spread messages, really positive messages widely. And I agree, like it's a creative content there's a creativity around it, and you don't have to be doesn't have to be super fancy to utilize the technology to reach more people. And and all of us are doing it in one way or another. Even when we use our phones to make a call, we're already using technology that is fairly new. I did notice a couple questions in the chat that I'm curious if
So John Freed asks, adult learners bring different brains to such interfaith engagement kinds of issues. How might that differential be bridged, maybe perhaps between adult learners and younger folks? I'm sure Interfaith Youth Core has thought about that question quite a bit.
I don't want to assume that I understand exactly where the differential is. So what I'm thinking is that there's maybe a difference between the way adult learners adopt new information about the internet, and how the internet, and I'm very sympathetic with that. Like, I was already, when I worked at Huffington Post, like everyone there was like 23 and brilliant, and I was like in my 40s. So Grandpa Paul was like, I don't know what to do here. So I am very sympathetic with that. I do think that there's a lot that isn't rocket science, and there's lots, there are ways to slowly begin to understand. And one of the ways that one of the things that I was actually had in mind with the curriculum that we developed was this could also be for kind of continuing learning for ministers who wanted to kind of be, so I actually, I'll put my my email out there for you folks. I'm not afraid of this crew. You can use paul@ifyc.org, and I'd be interested in you looking at the curriculum. Also, we also have a PDF of the curriculum. It may be intimidating to look at it on the way it is, but I can put the PDF and it's just basically the information. It's a little less interactive and a little less fun, but the information is there. And I think even adult learners will begin to understand, like, it's like any technology, that it's a disruption, and you begin slowly the adoption of it. But I don't think it's insurmountable. And my hope is that it is comprehensible to, we really intended this to be comprehensible to people at all levels of kind of tech ability. It's not a techie thing. Celine, I think you'll agree, like it's not geared towards techies particular. It's really geared towards religious.
It's a resource guide in a sense. Yeah. I just want to put this out in case there are people at Hartford or other places who are thinking about a career in ministry and wondering where to go with it. I do a lot of work with chaplaincy and the growth of the field of chaplaincy. And I thought, as I'm going through this curriculum, I thought, how amazing would it be if I knew of a designated interfaith, like online chaplain, so that when I do get, a message from, someone in Montreal who is having difficulty, I could, send that just as I would refer out maybe someone who needs more robust counseling than a chaplain would provide, or the like. So I want to put that plug out there. If people are thinking, I love the digital space and I want to be a chaplain, it could be a neat pioneering space.
Well, one of the things that I remember us talking about a long time ago with you and with Tiffany Steinwert, who's now the Dean of Religious Life at Stanford, was when she was it was you, or I don't know who it was. Someone was telling me about how they were, when they put their information online and invited people from online anonymously to reach out, that they got so many people who would not have come into their office, but they were able, so the opportunity is like for people who don't feel like, I'd never go to the chaplain's office because it means that like something's wrong with me, or that I've all of a sudden turned so religious or whatever terrible thing. But who really have a deep question. They're like, was it you, Celine? Was that you?
No, I'm still, as you're discovering, like very one toe at a time into online space.
Yeah, I think it was Tiffany who put like her availability in online, and people really reached out to her, and it vastly expanded the people who were in communication with her office. There's another anecdote that there was a church, St. John's here in the village, that had all their AA stuff, like Alcoholics Anonymous stuff, at the back table, and they saw like no one was taking them. But when they put the same materials on their website, people started downloading them. And so like there's ways that the internet allows a kind of engagement that can be very, very positive. It doesn't have to be like a second rate. For some people, it's first rate. I've talked to a lot of colleges who have started giving meditation classes remotely during the pandemic. And then when they went back to in person, they kept the remote aspect. And now they'll never leave it because they have twice as many people, joining them. So it's also about accessibility and how you can access. And, one of the great things about online learning is that it allows access for people who can't afford to move to wherever the place is, or, and still have their life, but still keep learning. And I do feel like there's a great analogy there also for ministry, that you're able to be engaged in learning. And I will also say, Scott, that I had the opportunity, there was a rabbi who I've admired for a long time, who has a beautiful congregation in LA. And I was a lurker, and it was totally impulsive because she, online, it was on social media. They were like, we're about to begin. And it was at one of the high holidays. And I've always kind of wanted to see what they would do. And they managed, the problem is a lot of online worship can get very two-dimensional. They managed to actually use the technology in a way that made it even more beautiful, so that you felt like you were experiencing something beautiful through the technology itself. And then the people would come and they just knew what they were doing. And it was just like, you were like, oh, wow, this is like gorgeous. This is better than Netflix. So I invite that kind of creativity as well as when we're thinking about leadership online.
What I've heard from any number of clergy and congregational leaders in this pandemic research we're doing, and one of the things that surprised them is once they went to live streaming or to Zoom, all of a sudden they had members of their congregation that they hadn't seen in a long time be a part, because those people were homebound, or those people had disabilities, or they were sensitive to the sound, on the spectrum or something. And so all of a sudden they realized that the traditional worship service and community gathering isn't always that welcoming for everyone. And sometimes the online reality has captions and can control the sound and doesn't have the smells and all those other sorts of things that oftentimes keep people away without meaning to. But I think there are many interesting dynamics playing out here. It's great to watch. It really is. So I don't know if we have any final questions. Oh, wait, maybe did I get a question here that I missed?
Well, I'm going to follow Reverend Paul and say this is a safe crowd and there aren't trolls here. So I just also put my contact in the chat. But for folks who are interested in the horizons of chaplaincy and what that could look like, what spiritual care online, I would point folks to the Chaplaincy Innovation Lab. But they're really, they're the folks on doing the cutting edge work.
So
I just want to,
go ahead, Paul.
I just want to respond really quickly to this was the Nikita L. I'd encourage you to put your resource of the Loving the Word in the and send it to the entire community, because it's actually a great example. I mean, I haven't had a chance to really go through it, but it's a great example of taking the technology and creating something beautiful. I mean, you've created a website where people can go and look and learn and engage, and that's a perfect example of something that, you know, literally just 25 years ago, it just wasn't an opportunity. It was not a possibility. You know, all of this, I'll just end with this. All of this is so new. So you're not late. You're not late. No one is late. You know, there's Chris Kelly or Kevin Kelly, who's really, you know, he founded Wired. He's a super smart guy. And he was like, as far as the internet goes, nothing has happened yet. We are just beginning this journey. So feel feel like anytime that you're stepping into the stream, you're stepping in the right moment. And each, everyone has something to offer to this, but as long as we, as long as we come with the recognition that while the internet right now has great dangers, ultimately everyone that you're meeting is actually a person. It could be a bot. Now there's a lot of bots out there, but even someone created the bot. So recognize that there are people around the world who you are able to meet, and imagine, I mean, that's just like so crazy that you can go online and meet someone from around the world if you want to be intentional about it. So right now, I mean, we're in conversation with Twitter about, starting to do more intentional work with engaging American users of Twitter with Malaysian users of Twitter, and and like, what does it look like for us to be intentional about reaching out beyond our normal circles? So the internet allows you to do that. So I encourage us to go with an expansive heart and a curiosity and see what we can discover.
Well, that's a beautiful conclusion, Paul. So thank you both for being here and the wonderful conversation, and thank all of our participants for your interesting questions. And I hope it's been helpful and you've gotten a lot of resources to follow up on. So thank you all. And again, thank you,
I was looking
Celine.
for like the Amen, Amen emoji. I wasn't sure what that one
So,
is.
This is going to
Amen.
be, I think it's right this, like for now, but all right. Thank you very much to Hartford and Celine. It's just such a pleasure, and Scott, what a pleasure to be with you all, and to everyone who's in this community.
Likewise.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Good night.